Let me tell you about the worst financial decision I ever made. Not a bad investment, not a failed business, not a gambling loss. No. My biggest mistake was trusting a small local credit union with my money. My name is Marcus, and this is the story of how a $3 investment gave me the sweetest revenge I've ever tasted. I moved to this town about 2 years ago for work. Nothing glamorous. Just a steady job, a modest apartment, and the need for a local bank account to handle my day-to-day expenses. I'd heard good things about this credit union. Small, community-focused, personal service. The kind of place where they supposedly know your name and treat you like a neighbor. What they didn't advertise was that they'd treat some neighbors very differently from others. I walked in one afternoon, opened an account, deposited a decent chunk of my savings, and thought nothing more of it. Just a bank, just a simple, boring bank. For the first few months, everything was fine, normal, unremarkable. And then one day, my card stopped working at the ATM. I stood there at that machine, trying my card 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, nothing. Just that infuriating little screen telling me my transaction could not be processed. I walked inside the branch, a little embarrassed, a little confused. The clerk behind the counter, young woman, barely looked up from her computer, gave me a code. A special code the bank uses to deduct cash directly from an account when the card isn't working. Standard feature, she told me. Nothing unusual. I thanked her, took the cash I needed, and went home. I didn't think about it again until a few days later, when I tried to check my account balance online and found out my account had been flagged for review. Apparently, the system had registered my cash withdrawal as a suspicious transaction, not because I had done anything wrong, not because I had gone into overdraft, not because there was any actual problem with my account, because their system had been slow to process the deduction, an accounting delay on their end, their mistake, their error. And because of their mistake, my money was locked. I called the bank the next morning, explained the situation calmly, waited on hold for 20 minutes, finally got through to someone. They told me it was under review and they'd get back to me. They didn't. I called again 2 days later. Different person, same answer, under review. We'll be in touch. A week passed, nothing. I went into the branch in person, asked to speak to a manager, was told the manager was unavailable, was given a phone number to call, called the number, was put on hold, was eventually told, again, that my account was under review. Every time I called, I noticed something. A tone? Not outright rude, not something I could point to and say, "There, that's it. That's a problem." Just a tone. A certain clipped impatience in the way they answered my questions. A particular way of sighing before responding. A thinly veiled suggestion, more than once, that perhaps I didn't fully understand how banking worked. And then one call, I'll never forget this. The representative paused before answering a question and said something that made my blood run cold. She didn't say anything explicitly. She didn't have to. But the way she carefully, slowly repeated my last name back to me, my foreign-sounding last name, before saying, very quietly, that she'd look into it, told me everything I needed to know. Over a month passed, 37 days to be exact. I counted. 37 days of my money sitting in an account I couldn't access. 37 days of phone calls going nowhere. 37 days of being treated like I was the problem when I had done absolutely nothing wrong. I couldn't pay certain bills on time. I had to borrow money from a friend just to cover my groceries. I was humiliated, frustrated, and exhausted. And I was angry. Really, truly, deeply angry. One evening, I called my family back home just to vent. I wasn't looking for solutions. I just needed to talk to someone who was on my side. My younger cousin was listening quietly while I laid out the whole story. When I finished, there was a pause, and then he said, "Marcus, I know exactly what to do. My cousin is 22 years old, studies computer science, and has what I can only describe as a very creative relationship with the internet. He told me about a Russian service he'd heard about, a platform where you could pay people small amounts. We're talking fractions of a cent to post whatever you wanted on social media. Complaints, reviews, comments, hundreds of them, thousands if you wanted, I'll be honest. My first reaction was skepticism. My second reaction was, tell me more. The service had options: American-looking profiles, local-sounding names, realistic account histories. You could choose the tone: frustrated customer, concerned community member, shocked local resident. I spent the next hour crafting my message carefully, thoughtfully, not lies. Everything I wrote was true. The locked account, the accounting error on their end, the 37 days, the phone calls, the tone, the way my last name had been repeated back to me. All true. I reviewed the message one more time. Then I spent $3. The most well-spent $3 of my entire life. Within hours, the credit union's social media pages began to light up. Facebook, Twitter, Google reviews, Yelp. Hundreds of posts, hundreds of comments. All variations of the same story. A customer treated unfairly, funds locked without reason, calls ignored, staff dismissive. The credit union's social media manager, I imagine, had a very bad morning. By afternoon, their pages were a disaster. Their carefully curated image of a friendly, community-focused bank was buried under an avalanche of complaints. I sat back and watched. And I waited. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, not a regular customer service representative, not a branch clerk, not the manager who had apparently been permanently unavailable for the past 37 days. The head of the call center personally called me. His voice was careful, measured, the voice of someone doing damage control. He told me they understood my frustration. He told me they were deeply sorry for the inconvenience. He told me that regardless of whether I wished to continue banking with them, they were prepared to immediately transfer my full balance to any bank of my choosing, plus $50 compensation. I let him finish. Then I said very calmly, "That sounds acceptable." I gave him the details of my new bank, the one I had already opened an account with the week before, just in case. By the end of the day, every cent of my money was transferred, plus the $50. The call stopped. The reviews stayed up. Turns out, telling a Russian bot service to delete posts is not really an option. Those comments are still there as far as I know. Still floating around the internet, still telling the story of a small credit union that locked a customer's funds for 37 days because of their own accounting error. That's someone else's problem now. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty about what I did, and I always think about that pause on the phone. The way she said my last name, the 37 days, the borrowed grocery money, the humiliation of calling and being told over and over that I was under review. No, I don't feel guilty. What I feel is something much simpler. Satisfied. Because here's what I learned from this experience. Large institutions, banks, corporations, credit unions, they count on the fact that most people will give up. They count on you getting tired of calling. They count on you accepting the situation because fighting back seems too hard, too complicated, too unlikely to work. They are not counting on a 22-year-old cousin with a creative mind and a $3 budget. If you have ever been dismissed, ignored, or treated like you don't matter by a company or institution that holds power over something that belongs to you, I want you to know something. You are not powerless. Sometimes the most effective weapon is not a lawyer, not a complaint form, not a supervisor's supervisor. Sometimes it's $3 and the right idea. Leave a comment below. Tell me your story. Have you ever fought back against a system that tried to grind you down? Subscribe to Day of Reckoning. Every week, we bring you stories of betrayal, injustice, and the people who refused to accept either. My name is Marcus, and I got every single cent back, plus $50.